Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks so much for joining us. So when we finished up our last episode on this old 89 Softail, we actually have us a roller now. The bike's really starting to look good right now, but we still got a few more things we need to finish up before we can fire this bike up. On this episode, we're going to start out with the rear fender to try to at least get it mocked up as best as possible so we can start getting some paint on it. So let's get started. So we've already done some work on this fender a few episodes back. If you want to watch it, I highly encourage it. But the reason why we halted is because I wanted to get the bike down on the ground to both see how it looks and also to make sure, you know, we've got good movement on our swing arm and all that. Also, our neighbor, I think, is having like maybe 700-800 trees cut out right now. So if you hear the chainsaw, that's why. But you know what? Work must go on for both them and us. I think what I'm going to do is come to the conclusion I'm going to use just this mount point right here. Well, I'm going to use this mount point, but this spot on the fender, I actually had it marked before. Once we get that kind of set in place, then we can, you know, rotate as needed back here. There's plenty of clearance up under here for it. Probably going to have to do a little cutting on these guys just to make sure the swing arm clears later, but that's pretty easy. So to be honest, I'm still not 100% sold on this fender. I don't know what it is about it that's just kind of bugging me a little bit, but it's going on. We're not going to stop at this point. I also know that this kind of style is probably going to be love or hate. Some of y'all are going to love it. Some of you are going to really hate it. But you know what? The whole purpose is to try something different, and you're never going to know unless you give it a try. So we're going to definitely push forward with it. One thing I didn't even consider or think about when I bought this fender was this line right here. Well, it's not a line, it's a raised spot, kind of this groovy curve that goes through here, which is pretty cool. I mean, depending on what you're doing, it might be something you really want. But for me, the concern is spacing. So this fender is just a hair narrower than the inside of the struts on the bike, which isn't really uncommon when you're doing custom stuff like this. So the problem is, like, here's a spacer I'll probably use. You know, I can go right here, or I can go down here, or I can go here in the middle. But if I had to go like right here on the edge, it's not going to work because that's raised up. But I think we're going to be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here. I believe that's close enough because these are the marks I was looking at. Scientific, of course. We'll get us a little pilot hole drilled there, and then once I do that, I'll measure about 18,000 times to figure out where to drill on the other side. Man, these drill bits that I've got, they are bad. They really suck. I need to replace them. Look at them. They're just a bouncing around. That's probably why they're all messed up. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and drill this one out all the way to get a bolt through it. I think that's my best way to figure out the other side, is to get one side kind of loosely mounted on the bike. At least that's my theory. I'm glad we decided to go ahead and just kind of mock this up and drill that hole out bigger. I think this is going to help to get that side figured out. Got us a bolt in here. See, here's our spacer I was talking about. I think that looks pretty good. That's going to work. Over here, we're going to be, you know, there's a little bit more space. So probably what I'll do is just add a washer or two to each side, including these. I think we're going to be in good shape. I think the idea of mounting up one side at a time to get these drilled was the smart thing to do. Hope so, at least. But don't ever stop having ideas, folks. Even when there's people out there that are just going to be negative, because you know what? They're always going to be negative and they're never going to get anything done. Just remember that. Now, did my mark work? I don't know if it did. Yeah, I think we are good. And now we have both sides on. Well, they're not on for good. They're mocked up. So as I expected, we are going to need one washer here and here. This has got a little bit of a gap here. You could probably just, you know, tighten them down and you wouldn't really notice it, but I don't want to bend anything, especially after we paint it. That might make the paint crack. Both holes are like lined up, you know, front to back that way, if that makes sense. I don't know how to properly say that. But as far as up and down goes, this one is off a little bit from this one. So what I did is, you know, you want to make sure you get enough adjustability in here. Just basically means to waller out the holes. That way you can kind of maneuver it a little bit as you tighten it down, especially whenever you get into the final mount up. One thing we will be doing here is covering this area up. You can see we get this white hole. I mean, you don't have to, I guess, but otherwise you're going to have, you know, garbage being thrown up. We cut this out so that we can make sure the seat fits in here really good. A lot of older bikes, like the Fender we took off of this bike, actually had a piece of rubber on here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take just a piece of rubber from the hardware store, get us some screws, and just attach it there, and that should take care of that. But next, we need to get the grinder out again. We are hitting the swing arm just right here on both sides. So that's not, I mean, that's going to be super simple to cut that off. And then probably what I'm going to do is just take just a little bit off here. I want to give ourselves a little more adjustability like this. So then we can move the rear of this fender up and down to figure out where we want to put these last mount holes. All right, let's see here. I'd say right about here-ish will do it, maybe. And one more to go. All 4 mount holes are done, which is awesome news. Now we're just going to take our massager here and clean up these rough edges. The fender is mounted. It's actually on there pretty tight too, not just sitting on there. Pretty good. We got some spacers there in the back. I actually just used washers. That worked out pretty good. And I think our front spacers are actually going to work out as they are. So that's excellent news. I do need to get to the holes with just a little round file. The left side is just down a hair versus the right. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit all the holes the way I need to. That way I can give ourselves a little more adjustability in the end, but that should be pretty simple. I am going to order some new hardware for it. These look decent. They look okay. The problem is they're not the right length. So I'm just going to go ahead and order some stuff up. Since we got to get it painted anyway, it's not like I got to hurry up and mount it up. But the last thing, just got to get this little rubber piece. I got to go track that down at a hardware store and get that mounted up, and then this thing's ready for paint. So 2 things I do want to point out on this setup right here. First of all is the seat. So on the seat itself, this Lapera bare bones on this bike mounts, as a lot of you probably know, down here on the frame, which is pretty cool. I like that the way that it does. Most bikes, of course, have a little mount up here that we're all used to. Now on this setup, if I had a mount up here, this would have been a lot harder to deal with, because then you got to really kind of take into consideration how the mount comes up off the seat. It doesn't make it impossible, but it surely throws kind of another wrench in the situation when you're trying to get it all lined up. The other point is how I mounted it. So originally, my original plan was to go in here and cut these struts either here and do like a real minimalist type fender that came all the way back to here, or just cut these suckers off completely and then run a swing arm mounted fender and then do possibly a spring seat up here. Now, I think that would look cool. Personally, for me, I would really like that. The problem is then you've hacked into the bike and you can't really take it back to stock. So the way it is now, I'm going to throw in the strut covers with whoever buys this. All they would have to do, if you want to go back to stock, mount those strut covers on there, throw you a factory style fender on there. You can buy aftermarket or used one or whatever. And then if you want to, you can just take your wires down here from the side mount tag, run them up through there, and you can switch right back, and nobody would have any idea that this sucker was modified back here. Well, I got to imagine getting this tank on is a sign of good progress. Now, we got this tank fixed for less than $100, and I am very pleased with it. If you want to check out what we did and kind of the big reveal on both tanks, go check out the previous video. I think there's some info at the start and the end on it. And this side over here was Definitely the better of the two, but we did a little work on it as well. I think our cable alignment and wires are pretty good. My main concern now is just don't hit or scratch anything. Everything just looks too nice. I guess that's what we're going for, right? Even with the flaws on this tank, because she ain't perfect, it is nice that, very, very nice that it'll be able to get cleaned up and actually throw some polish on it, maybe. Throw this pingle back on. These are very nice. And they're also very expensive when new. All right, I think we're good to go. Of course, we got our fresh fuel lines. I do need to find something to wrap around this line, just where it goes in between those cylinders in there on those fins, as it gets really hot. Only touching in one little spot. So I think what I'll do is I got a bigger piece of hose, even like a piece of heater hose. And I think I'll just cut it down the middle and just wrap it around in there, just where it touches. Because I ain't buying nothing else, that's what I'm saying. Tired of buying. Oh, come on, get on there. There you go. Almost forgot the gas tank vent. On this one did have something plugged in the end of it, just some crud and all that. So if you're rerunning your engine, transmission, or gas tank vent line, just check the end of it. Critters can get in there, stuff like dirt daubers, and make nests. So just clean them out if they got junk in them. Come on, get in there. All right. Well, that is too long. I wonder how this was. Honestly have no idea. I can't even remember how this was routed before. But I want to run this right behind here and go down around the starter. So I'm guessing somebody just had this shoved in. We'll take care of this problem right now. Fixed. There we go. I think this will work. Might be a little short on this bottom one, but you know what? I ain't really worried about that. I was about to say I don't really care. I do care, but I'm not worried about it. I do care, just not as much. Let's put it that way. I think that'll work. I think so. Just put some random zip ties, and I think we'll be good to go. What am I hung up on? Oh boy, having some problems. This should not be a difficult task. Might want to take those off of there. There. That's a little bit better. And we'll finish off the tank, putting in some fresh gas caps. Didn't really show on camera, but those old caps, they were pretty beat up. I am a fan, though, of these old style click type gas caps on these older bikes. I just like them because they're cheap, they look pretty darn good, and they just work. Just my opinion, of course. Tank's turned out pretty good, all things considered. I'm really liking those gas caps. Now, we are missing our little trip meter adjuster right here. I was actually going to buy it because they're, they're dirt cheap, but the aftermarket speedo somebody put in doesn't even line up with that hole, so you can't even run it. So that would explain why I was missing. This shot up here, really liking the caps. Just can't beat the cheap caps. And then over here on what was the bad side, just a little bit of improvement, but I am liking it. Well, I guess if I actually want to fire this bike up, I should finally adjust these push rods. I've been putting it off because I, quite frankly, just don't want to mess with it. But I'm not going to get into all the specifics, and the reason is depending on your application, your results may vary. They can, it can depend on your types of push rods you got and your types of lifters and all that. But just as a high level, what I'm trying to do here is, first of all, I'm getting this cylinder to top dead center, and I basically want to make sure that my lifters are at the bottom or in a position to where they would be putting no pressure at all on the valve. So basically, both valves would be closed. Kind of the same thing that you would do if you were going to remove the heads and take the cylinder apart. You would want to make sure that they're in that same position. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take my push rods and I'm actually going to adjust them out and get them to what's called zero lash. Now, zero lash, honestly, is just some fancy engineer's term for, take up the freaking slack. So you can see here, these are still way loose. So what I'll do is I'll back these down all the way until there's no up and down movement, but I can still turn them pretty easily. Now, from there comes the actual preload part, and this is where it's going to depend on your application. So once you've determined how many turns you need to make down here, you're going to basically put a preload down on the lifter. Now, remember, these are hydraulic lifters that'll actually compress. So you're putting that basically that pressure down on them, and then after that, you want to let this motor sit for like 15 to 30 minutes, because once you first put that preload on them, you're not going to be able to turn these. They're going to be all cranked up, right? So they're not going to want to move. When you come back after 15 to 30 minutes, you should be able to spin these. If you can't spin them, honestly, at that point, you could just wait longer. I've heard some people letting them sit overnight before, or maybe you put too much pressure on them to begin with. Just, go back and check your work. After that, once you're happy with it, you can button it up, put it all back together, and move on to your other cylinder. One call out I do have is whenever you first put preload down on these lifters, and these will not turn, so meaning you haven't done your 15 to 30 minutes yet, do not go and start moving your rear wheel to rotate the motor for any reason. Like, don't get ahead of yourself and say, oh, cool, now I'm going to start working on this one. If you start rotating this engine while those have that preload on them without those lifters bleeding down, you could actually bend a valve. So be careful, take your time, and you should be able to take care of it. All right, I think we're about there. So I think we got these set here. They actually set for about 20-25 minutes. And you can see here, they now will spin on us here pretty freely, which is good. So now I'm going to do is just lock them down. Now, one thing I did do on these is I went a little on the tight side. When you do a lot of research, you'll see some folks will go in and actually make the preload a little tighter. The reason is kind of it can help to kind of quieten down the valve train noise if you've got any. This bike did have a slight tick to it. I think what it was is this exhaust push rod right here, when I took it apart, was actually a little loose. That's probably what it was. So I just went a little hair on the tight side on these, and maybe that'll help us out when we go to fire it up. I guess we'll find out, won't we? But the beauty with adjustable push rods is you can always go back in and adjust them if needed. Make sure when you do this, you slip with the wrench and bust your knuckles. To me, these either go on really easy or they're really a pain in the butt. just depends on how lucky I am. I'm sure my technique isn't the greatest. That's probably why. Oh, there we go. That's perfect right there. That was good technique. There we go. Rear cylinder is done. We'll go ahead and fill this up before we put the exhaust on. You don't have to, it just makes it a little bit easier. Boy, this funnel, god dang, this funnel is going to take me about 4 hours to do this. My good one's all dirty and messed up. I don't feel like cleaning it, so my laziness is getting the best of me. Let's take a quick look at our handiwork here before we wrap up this video. Of course, the bike is just, she's looking good. I'm really starting to dig it. I'm really starting to like it now. Now, we started out this video, we started on the fender, we got it all done. Of course, it's not obviously mounted, and the reason is the clear on this sucker is still a little tacky, so I want to wait. You know, it's about a 10-minute job. It's not a big deal, so we'll get that next time. But the only thing to point out is that is a rattle can black, and there's just no way it's going to match back to these tanks. Let's be honest, it's not going to match back exactly unless I found the actual, you know, paint for this and all that, and I could find a rattle can. I actually did look for it, but it was kind of a lost cause, and plus, trying to track that stuff down, it can get a little pricey. So we're going to go with that. I think it's going to be all right. Now, the true test, of course, will be when we get this sucker out in the sunlight and we can see it all together. Another look at our tanks here. I know we've seen them before, but I had to look at them again because I just think they look really, really good compared to where they were. I am digging our little cheap chrome gas caps. It sets it off a little bit. Not too bad, not too bad. Now, as I've said before, we're about sub $100 all in up here. This is including the decal as well as the clear we had to buy to redo both of them. We did do some clear on the other tank as well. The main reason is just to kind of help them look as, you know, close as possible or match as close as possible, and I think it did its job. Now, if you include what we did back here, this is a can of obviously rattle can black and clear. I think we're still sub 100, you know, under $100. So no, none of this stuff is going to match perfect, but it's cleaned up. It can be polished up. I think it's going to work pretty good. Now, as far as where we go from here on this bike, there's really not a whole lot left. We are getting really close, folks, to firing it up. Of course, we got to get our fenders on, which doesn't take, you know, that takes mere minutes to do that. The main thing is exhaust. Now, we do have some brand new pipes for it, but they are cheap. That is how we are on this channel. We do things cheap, or as some people say, budget. So I thank you folks for saying that to try to keep me looking a little better than I am. But I got a few things I want to do to the pipe, so there is a little work to do on them. And after that, honestly, we get fluids in it. Hopefully, we're going to be hearing this thing fire off. We'll just have to wait and see. Well, we are getting dangerously close to finally wrapping this bike up. As I said earlier, I'm hoping in the next episode we might be able to fire this bike off, but we'll just have to wait and see. But if you haven't subscribed already, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. As always, I thank you guys so much for watching. We'll chat with you next time.